Growing up
So
in Howard Falls, my friend Martha's family, the father had a store. At first, he was a shoemaker store, and then they decided to. I think something happened. He lost his store, or he changed. Somebody told him he should go into the restaurant business, which is the worst thing he ever did because it's a 24/7 job. But they had rooms up in this house. They bought a house on Main Street in Howard Falls, and they had these tenants. They used to work at West Point, and then they would give them clean their room, and they would give them a meal. So she was very busy. But I said to her, "You should have gone to Ladycliff. You're right there."
Hmm.
She says, then my father died. Her father died when he was 59. He was very young. She had to help her mother so the mother could survive because they had all these tenants. A lot of them didn't speak English. I don't know. They worked at West Point. I don't know. But that was, she says to me today, because I see her once a week. And she says, she says, I should have gone. But then she worked as a secretary in West Point. She got a job. And she used to walk she was almost near the gate of West Point. She used to walk there. Now you can't even walk because you have to tell them where you're going. You can't go.
share license and everything.
And there's another girl I grew up with, Louise Campbell. She was a teacher. She went to Ladycliff. She was an only child. She was sort of spoiled. And the girl next door to me, Bobby Arnold, her mother was my teacher in middle school. She was a social studies teacher. I don't know whatever happened to her. She never went to college. I mean, there was a college right in town. I don't know whatever happened to her. She was very spoiled. And I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, she's married and she has 5 kids, twins, and 3 others. The worst part is the guy left her with the kids.
Oh no.
She had no skills. She ended up, I think, working in the West Point, the laundry. I don't know what she did. Finally, I don't know what happened. I just said, that was really, her mother, they were both educated. I mean, her father worked at West Point, had a good job. I really felt bad after I found out about that because she was bright. I mean, and she had an advantage. Her mother was a teacher. I mean, it helped her a lot.
Yeah. What would you say, how would you describe yourself when you were like younger, like in middle school or as a young adult? And then how would you describe yourself like in your like 20s and 30s?
Well, we lived on Main Street, where the house is, and the school is up on Mountain Avenue. They had no buses then, so you had to walk. So in order for me to get to school on time, I used to go up the road and go through the cemetery
Mm-hmm.
to get to the school. And we had to come home for lunch. They didn't have any cafeteria. I mean, then. So we had a lot of friends. We used to go into sports, in the different sports, and we had very good teachers. I liked it. I mean, they were very nice teachers. Yeah, to us. And so there was, as you come in, before you get to the school, on the opposite side, there's this guy that sells, his name was Monty, and he had a coal business, and he had a secretary and all this nonsense going on. So one day they said you have to stay in the school. Something happened. Evidently, the secretary's husband came with a gun to shoot one of the bosses. I guess she was going with him. And they had the police there. I don't remember. I don't know if he shot him. He shot him, but I think that he didn't die. It was like today. They closed the school with the lockdown. It was like a lockdown. And then going to religion, in the back of the school, you walk down a path. We did all walking, and we went to CCD, whatever it was. I didn't go to the Catholic school because this public school is right near, not that far away. In the beginning, when I was living on Murns Avenue, we used to walk together.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget my uncle Pete. He'd be out there early in the morning with when the ashes. He'd put them all over the sidewalk and on the street there so you could walk. It was very slippery. I says, what are you doing? He says, this will help you so you won't fall. I said, oh, okay. But we were close, and that's why, like my cousin Yolanda, she was my age, and my cousin uh, Anna was younger. She won a scholarship to the Lady Cliff, the youngest. She lives in Chicago. And Bessie was the one that taught me how to. She was in the middle. She taught me how to drive. My father couldn't drive. She taught me how to drive. He got disgusted. So she taught me. Went up to West Point. We put the rock so I can park, and I passed the test. The test was the worst test I've ever taken. I had to go to Newburgh, and I had the car with the shift, and every street was a full stop, and it was a cobblestone. I said, oh. So my father took me up there, and I wasn't turning the ignition, and he goes like that outside.
That start.
And then I passed it. But
what was your happiest memory, do you think, from your childhood? Do you have what was when you look back at your childhood and you say, oh, that was like a really good memory, or this or that?
I think the camaraderie, everybody was together. We used to go to my cousin's house on Easter Sunday. We all had the gloves and hats, and we were always dressed up. Everything had a match, in those days. And we used to get together and have Easter egg hunts, and then I tell you, New Year's we do bang the pots, and we were always like together, sort of, because my father used to, it was his sister up there, and we had a good time. I don't know, it's just.
You're telling me also about the seafood.
We got along. In other words, you didn't really fight or anything. There was nothing.
Yeah.
But when my cousin Yolanda married a serviceman, and they were stationed in California, she had her daughter, Amy, and they didn't realize she was deaf. The Army doctors didn't know she was deaf. To me. So she came to visit her parents. They came for vacation to Howland Pool, and she was on the wall, and she was going to fall. And so then they said what's the matter with her? So then they got a pot and they banged it, and she had no reaction at all. So then they went to the Army, because then he was stationed here. So then they were going to go to Germany, but he decided, in order for her to get to that school for the deaf, she had to have an address, local address. She couldn't have a Germany address or whatever, or any other state. So he retired. He was ready for retirement because he was in the Army a long time. And so she used her grandmother. They used the grandmother's address, and she went to school for 8 years there. Stayed there. She slept there. And she was one of the lucky girls that when she got out and she went to the high school, Howland Falls, they really accepted her, because her friends that went to Poughkeepsie High School, they ostracized her. She said she couldn't believe it. She would read your lips, or she would, and then she was going out with Jose, and she wanted an apartment. She didn't want to be there. So I had the apartment upstairs in my father's house. So I said, I don't care. $200 a month.
Mm.
So in order for her she was upstairs. So her uncle, the one that lives in Chicago, he was the one that was a cadet and lieutenant. He put, when the doorbell rang, the light would flash, and his phone rings, whatever, and the light. So that's what he did. But her phone was a special phone because it had a big red button on it in case you needed an emergency. There was emergency downstairs, but she didn't hear it. The girl downstairs was taking a shower, and the tiles start falling down, right? So I got a call, because I was taking care of the property for my sister-in-law, and because they couldn't figure out what they're going to do. So they called me. The police shut the gas and electric off, and they called me, and I went there, and I'm lucky she didn't get hurt, this girl. But my niece was upstairs, and I don't think she heard the commotion. So we had to get the tile man. We had to get this guy and that. The girl was very nice. She worked at West Point. She was very nice. She could have sued us, I guess. I don't know. But that was one of the incidents. But then after they got married, they lived in Howell Falls, because he was she got a very good job at West Point with the computers and everything. Because she went to Ladycliffe, and then Ladycliffe closed, then she went to Stack. But she had to have somebody with her or a tape for the lectures. And my cousin paid extra for that.
Mm.
So she could graduate.
Let's move on to. So I just want to make sure we cover all this stuff. Let's move on to how and when you met Pop Up.
This teacher, Dottie Hartwick, was one of these. I don't know how. She was teaching for a long time, and her aunt was teaching too in the same school. She says, "I'm going to fix you up with somebody." I says, so she fixed me up with this guy named Vincent, who's supposed to go out, and then all of a sudden, she fixed me up with a Wookiee. So two of them show up. I said, "What's going on?"
The same place, the same time.
They came pick me up.
Both of them.
Yeah. I think I met her someplace with them. You know what it was. So then I started going out with Augie. Then he.
So did you go? You on a first date with him instead of this other guy? Like, what happened?
We just went. We just all of us together. She came with us because it was too complicated. Her husband.
Where'd you go?
Bob. We went to some kind of a restaurant and we had a good time. And he's the one that drew that picture for me for Augie.
Bob, her husband.
Bob Howard. He's like to. So they bought a house down Little Italy where they used to have the feasts down there, and she was very flighty. I can't say that. She was very flighty. I said to her, "I don't want to be fixed up." She said, "I gotta get fixed up." But it was a small town, and then I met his parents, but it was a happy time. It was a happy time. My cousin. The one winter we had was in the 50s, I guess, because I was going to live. We had a severe snowstorm, and my Aunt Tessie is short. We couldn't find her. I said to her, I said, "Aunt Tessie, we can't see you." She says, "I'm trying to come through." She said to the apartment, to my mother's house, and they made a path. And they used to come and visit us a lot. We used to go upstate a lot. As I said, one incident with when Lisa was big. Lisa was in high school, I think. So she was going to spend the summer up there. My cousin Teresa and her daughters, Elisa and Elena and Celeste. So we brought her. Augie and I brought her up there. We got home and we got a phone call. You have to come back and pick her up. She was afraid of my cousin's husband, Sammy. He is frightening. Look, I mean, he's not that frightening. But I said, "What's going on?" We had to go back up there 5 hours to pick her up. And then when Marianne went up there, before that, I got a call from my cousin. She can't breathe, but she was allergic to something, and it was an old house. And because they had so many children, daughters, they made it like a dorm in one big room, and then they had another room for the brother. And it was an old house, and probably the wood was old, and she was allergic. So they brought her downstairs, and she was better. Even so, when we had to go pick her up. And then I had to take her to an allergist, so she was allergic to dust, mold. So she took all the tests, Marianne. But then we went up there again. I don't know. We went to her sister lived in the same town, in Elsie. But it was nice to go to their house, and
yeah.
We used to go to the band concerts and there.
What year did you get married?
1957.
1957. And where was that?
La Polina in Cornwall. The restaurant, but it's gone now. It's destroyed.
What do you remember about your wedding day?
Well, my wedding day, my brother-in-law was supposed to be the best man, Charlie, and he didn't come in time, so my brother had to be the best man.
Was he known for being late, or what happened?
I have no idea. They lived in New Hampshire. And he married Peggy. Charlie married Peggy. When he came out of the Navy, he was in the submarine service. When he came out of the Navy, he started working in a factory up there in fiberglass. And he wasn't. And he got sick, so they sent him to the Veterans Hospital. And he's not allowed, because he had his lungs. When he was in the submarines, when they used to go down so fast, it did something to his lungs. And he was not allowed to have anything like that to work with, right? But meanwhile, he went to college. He was like, after that, he went to college. He was an engineer, chemical, whatever, you know. But, Peggy said he has to work. We need money and all that. He met her, she had no shoes on. I mean, real. And evidently, she had a couple of brothers and sisters, and they all ended up in foster care for a while. Maybe the parents couldn't take care of them up there.
What do you mean? Like she was poor? She didn't have shoes on? Like
she
what?
was poor, yeah.
Wow.
And so she wanted him to work, naturally.
Yeah.
So he ended up in the hospital. Then he came home, and he's up there. And then all of a sudden, he back to the hospital again, and he gets a letter from her. She didn't want to be married to him anymore. In the hospital. Dear John letter, whatever. Meanwhile, he had two boys. He had Stephen and he had Michael. Michael was the oldest. They were like, I think 7 years apart. I don't know. So Augie and I went up there to see them. So we went to Peggy. We picked up Charlie from near the town where the hospital was, because he was living there then in an apartment. And we bringing him to where Peggy lived in Portsmouth. And so he went up near to the house. She wouldn't let him in because he wasn't supposed to be there till Saturday. This was a Friday. So we're leaving, and we weren't even allowed to go in. So we parked the car down. It was like a hill. Michael, the son, Michael, was running down the hill, crying and wanted his father. It was so sad. That was the worst experience. He was crying so hard. He was holding on to his father, and the father couldn't say it. She wouldn't allow it. I mean, she had so much of, I don't know. She was a nice person. And then she had a daughter with a colonel or a major, I don't know. Mm-hmm. The girl was very nice, but she died of cancer. Stephen used to take care of her. Stephen was very good. See, he didn't really see that much, because he was younger, how his mother was. So he lived with his mother. I mean, after all, it's his mother. I mean, but the thing is, she didn't want Charlie to be there. So then he goes and marries Ronnie, and they live in Jersey. They lived in Jersey, and he had the job as an engineer. And then he got very ill. Augie and I went to see him. In order to go see him in this room, we had to wear completely covered with thing, and we had to have a mask on. It was very big because whatever it did came back.
What was Pop-Pop's relationship with his brother? What was he like? It
wasn't really that close, because I guess it was 7 years apart, and Charlie decided when he graduated from high school, he went to California. I don't know why he went to California. I mean, that's the story, that he went to California. And he learned photography and all that, and then all of a sudden he's in the Navy. I mean, there was no connection to me. I didn't even know what he was doing. And So
Pop-Pop and him weren't really too in touch?
No, not that much. Not when they were growing up. I mean, when they were almost 7 years apart. When they were in school, probably they were. But my mother was a good cook. She was a good cook. She was a very good cook. She was, I said he was sort of strict, but she was very rigid too sometimes. Now, my parents asked them, they had a place in Florida, wanted to take them both down to Florida, drive them down, stay there a month, and bring them back.
Take down Charlie and...
No, my mother-in-law and father-in-law.
Oh, okay.
He refused, because he had a business. He was selling candy. I mean, to me, she would have enjoyed it. I know she would have enjoyed the beach, because she comes from probably the town in Italy where it's warm, and I don't know. They refused.
They didn't travel much.
Usually my parents used to leave in October to go to Florida. But this year they were leaving after Thanksgiving. So I said to my mother-in-law, be nice to invite my parents. Can they come for Thanksgiving? Because we went to their house for Thanksgiving. Oh, too many people. She wouldn't invite my parents. And yet they invited her to go down to Florida. I could not believe. I just couldn't believe it. Just blew my mind.
Mm.
It was only Charlie. And that's it. And Augie and I, and I think Michael.
Mm.
And Miriam, maybe Miriam. I was so I said to my husband, we're going up to see my parents. I don't care. We had the turkey there. Forget it. We went up there. My mother, I think they were very hurt. But what are you going to do?
Mm.
She didn't want them there.
So going back to your wedding day, you said, so the best man ended up actually being your brother for Pop-Up. What was your wedding like? Do you remember anything about it?
Oh, a lot of dancing and, they had to do the garter and then they threw the bouquet. We threw the bouquet. It was a very nice place. The food was delicious. It was Italian food. It was very good. My father did. They did a good job. When we went to these people, they were very nice. It was Italian people, and they must have given a lot of weddings, whatever, because they did a very good job. And then we went to Virginia for our honeymoon because he was stationed down there. And we went all over. We went to the battlefields in Virginia, and we went all around,
Washington as well.
Washington and all that. Because he was stationed, he was going to be stationed in the Pentagon because he was in the Army then. He used to come home like once a month, and then I would go there for dinner, for lunch. I mean, Sunday was a big, everybody had a big meal on Sunday, lunch. I mean, it was a big thing. Spaghetti, meatballs, ravioli, prosciutto, whatever. I mean, that was a big thing. We always had it here too. Every Sunday, everybody sat down and ate. So I lived in the apartment in Haverstraw, so Augie came and picked me up. We went to his parents' house. We had the dinner. I got violently ill that night. She cooked the macaroni like al dente. And it must have been, I wasn't used to it. I don't know. The food, I mean, she had the sauce was delicious. She had everything in that pot, sausage, everything imaginable. She's a good cook. I mean, no, but it must have been al dente. It was hard. I mean, but I don't understand it. I get home and my roommate said, "Uh-oh, here we go again." I didn't really want to go down there for dinner because, as I said, I used to get sick.
Mm.
So
you were saying Pop-Up would come
up. So then
up.
when we got married,
yeah,
I made the macaroni. He never said it's too soft. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Pop-Up used to like it the way his mother cooked it, I guess, then.
What?
Is that what you said? So you're saying that Pop-Up was used to eating his mother's cooking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She was a very good cook.
And so Pop-Up he was
in the Army.
In the Army. Tell us a little bit about Pop-Up and like where he worked.
Then that summer, we rented an apartment down there because I was going to be there for the 2 months, whatever, was teaching it. I had to get back in September, and we rented an apartment. And
this is after you're married?
In Virginia, yeah, we were married, and we rented the apartment in Virginia.
What town was that?
Alexandria, I think it was. And we'd go to concerts. They had like Frank Sinatra, for the Army. They had all these shows, and on the Potomac. It was beautiful.
Who did you see? Do you remember whom you saw?
What?
Who did you see perform?
Frank Sinatra and
wow.
Mark. I mean, it was a variety of things. Sometimes it was just opera. So it was nice because Saturdays we used to. But he worked shift work.
And what did he do exactly?
He was working he was like in finance, I guess. He did, So in the basement, they had like a clothesline in the washer and the dryer. So I hung up some of the clothes. I went back because they were gone. And he stole the clothes. I'm saying, oh my God, somebody was really desperate.
Wow.
But in the daytime, I used to take walks, because he was working when he was working. And I used to go around, and it's visit. It is a beautiful town there, Alexandria. And even Washington's a nice town.
Did you go back to any of these places after that, or was it like when was the last? Did you go back before like my graduation, for example, to Washington? Or?
I went back to visit this friend who was was from Lady Cliff. I went to see. We went there. She says, "Why don't you come down?" No, she was a teacher in Habits Trust. Her name was Josephine Laporte. She says, "Why don't you come down?" Her brother lived in that area. So she said, "Why don't you come down to visit me?" So I went to visit her. I had the car, and we went to visit her. She was very nice. She made eggplant. I'm used to the eggplant. You fry it, and then you put it in. So she said to me, "I got a better way." Okay. She just layered it. She never fried it. In other words, she put it together and she baked it. It wasn't that bad, but you're used to the frying. Now, Aunt Tina says her mother used to fry it twice. And Uncle Frank says he does it just the once because Uncle Frank's a good cook, though. But that's an experience. But it was nice down there. Very, we could go to the movies, or I like the shows. Though the concerts were very nice. They had outdoors. It was very nice. The Washington was nice. Where you were was nice too.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful on the water, isn't it?
That restaurant that was near the water, that was nice.
Beautiful. Yeah. Sequoia.
Remember that guy that had that car?
Oh, yeah. My dad loved that. Remember? He got the ride from the hotel.
Yeah, we got the ride. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit. So then Pop-Up was in the army. Then so after that, he stayed down there for a little while. You came back up.
I came back up, and then he got out of the army, and then we got an apartment on Washburn Lane.
Right. And then what was he doing for work? He
worked at Letterlace. He was an accountant for business, whatever. He got a job. He went to Pace. He started at Pace in New York. He used to commute. And then he decided to, when we were married, he enrolled in Fairleigh Dickinson.
Mm-hmm. And how did you end up in this house again?
Well, we were living in Washburn Lane, and it was nice because these people had a summer camp. They had a lot of properties. They maybe 5 or 6 acres. I don't know how much property. They had a swimming pool and all kinds of things. And people from New York City or the Bronx or the line used to rent these cabins. So the room, when my kids learned how to go on a bicycle, they didn't have to worry about the traffic because the road was, nobody was on the road, and it was nice because we made friends with them,
mm-hmm.
and they would come back every year. The same families would come back every year, and then so we were building this house. We got a contractor. We got the contractor because he didn't know anything about it, and we didn't want. But he wanted more money, and the provident, the bank says, will give him more money, as if they hasn't done anything. It's just a shell. So they came and inspected, and he said that. And then finally, he decided to leave. He just left.
With the money.
Meanwhile, the bricks came in wrapped around with the lady next back there. She says, "Someone's taking your bricks." He was coming to take the bricks. Wow. Then we had to go to court. The plumber never got paid. We paid this guy, the contractor, and he never paid. So we had to go to court. We had to prove that we paid them. So then we had to get the sheetrock man. We had to get a plumber. We had to get an electrician. We had to get a carpenter. So we hired this guy, Homestead, this company in Stony Point, and they did fireplaces and whatever. So the sheetrock man comes here and he says to me, "You're never going to be able to light that fireplace." I says, "What?" I went down to Jersey with the car. They weighed the car. I put the rocks in the car, and they weighed it again. That's how they charged you. I says, "You're kidding me? All those rocks?" So I said, stop
What was the
work.
problem?
I called the building inspector. He came. Something with the ventilator inside wasn't put right. I don't know. So they had to fix it. I said, so I'm not gonna. I said, these people are professional. And you look down here on over the driveway. My father said to the guy, you should put a heavier piece of metal across them because his house, my father's house, was the same way, but this is bigger. Oh no! And you could see some of the bricks.
Because of the weight.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that was an experience, a really experience. The best one was the carpenter. He used to come 11 o'clock, eat his lunch, and then he made all the wooden floors. I mean, he was a single guy, so he came in and he'd leave like 5 o'clock. He'd come late.
Did so you moved into this house when you had already had my father and Aunt Marianne? Is that right?
And we were in the apartment, and we told the lady we were leaving because they told us we were going to move in here in July. We gave her notice. We had 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen. We were on the 2nd floor. So then I had to tell her we couldn't move. We had to wait another almost a year because we had to hire all these different people. That's what I was trying to avoid. Hiring the plumber, hiring this guy, hiring that guy, having to be here.
So you really saw this house being built. You really.
I'll never build another house. But
what was that like when it was finally done?
Was when I was in that apartment house. They had the globe in the bathroom.
Oh yeah.
I pulled the string and the globe hit me on the head, and I had blood coming out. And I was new there, so I went across to the girl. I had a heavy towel, and I went across. I called the girl. She was out in the yard. She came over. I mean, I didn't even know her that well. She says, I'll take it. She says, so she put it pressed in. It still was bleeding. Couldn't stop it. Happened that down the street in that shopping center, there was a new doctor who just moved in, Catavolis. So he took me, and he fixed it, whatever. I said, it's nothing yet. But there was the woman that lived downstairs, very quiet. She did a lot of knitting. She showed me how to knit different things. We had a nice big porch in the front. And it was a nice apartment, but it was, Marianne and when we were in Haverstraw, we lived in Haverstraw first. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. We lived in Haverstraw after we got married. We had a bedroom, a living room, and a kitchen. That's it. The kitchen was huge. So we lived on the 2nd floor. We lived right across from the football field in Haverstraw. And right near St. Peter's Church, which was nice. So we had, after Marianne was born, we had 2 cribs, a full-size bed in this bedroom. It was tight. That's why we had to move, because it was just too tight. Now, the people that I rented the room in Washburn Lane, they owned a lot of property. They owned stores in Haverstraw that they sold. I mean, they were German, and they were very frugal. They had a business like the German potato salad. They had like a restaurant, whatever. They were hard workers, very hard workers. Mm. But the daughter was a teacher, and her name was Anita. And I said to her, we can't leave. Where are we going to go? With 2 kids and all that.
So what was it like when you finally moved in here? Do you remember when the house was done? Do you remember when you moved in?
It was like almost a year later.
So what year was that?
I don't remember.
Late 50s?
Yeah.
Well, my dad would have been born, so he was 58.
Yeah.
So how old would he have been? Maybe 2 or 3?
Maybe it was, we started to build the house probably when Marianne was born. Oh, Marianne was born in 61. Maybe we were in that apartment, because Marianne was in that apartment. The kitchen was very small, but it was comfortable in the living room. But
so when you moved in here, it was then like a big relief, I guess.
Oh.
And did you furnish it immediately? Did you kind of have to? Because obviously you probably spent a lot of money.
My cousin that lived in Brooklyn. Then he moved up to Saratoga. He was in the West Point in the Army. He learned these things. He didn't have any of this training. He's a very good cook. Lemon meringue pie. Oh, could kill for it. And his brother, they both became upholsterers in the city, in New York, and in Brooklyn. So they decided to have a business upstate. And so they had a business upstate. And he made me my father that couch, and he made the other couch, and he made the chairs, upholstery. We had to go with my father's truck with the thing. And he did that. Two brothers one lived here and one lived diagonally on the same street in Saratoga. Beautiful houses, right? Well, what happened was my cousin Frank his son was, I don't know if he was slow or maybe he had autism or maybe it's something, So the one Pat, his wife, said something about something's wrong with him and made a remark, and it got Frank and Agnes very upset. So they wouldn't talk to each other. They worked together in the same business. They wouldn't talk to each other. They both built houses or bought houses on the lake, because in August they would rent their house to the people that went to the races. That was they paid the mortgage, whatever, because they would bring their maids and their butlers, whatever. So when we had to go to have, my mother had a chaise lounge and we wanted to change it. We had to go across the street to talk to them, and then we had to go across the street to them. They didn't talk to each other. And when my cousin Frank passed away, he wasn't allowed to go to the wake and all that stuff, but he snuck in. He's ridiculous. That's why I said, when my father passed away, and Mary, my sister-in-law, and my Joan and John, anyhow, Tom would not sign the release of the will. Tom would not, he was only 15, he would not sign the release of my father's will. The will was that they would get the house in Howland Falls, and I would get the one in Cornwall, and then we would separate the one down in Florida at that time. And I wanted to change it because I wanted the house in Howland Falls, because that's my homestead. She refused. I mean, she had a lot of control of my sister-in-law. So I said to my children, I said, I don't want to have the same thing that happened to my two cousins. They wouldn't talk to each other and all that. I says, just, stay with your cousins. She took us to court. They took us to court. They took me to court.
Joan did.
Not Joan, Tom. Well, Tom was only 15, but Mary was there. Mary took. So it was in Orange County. My lawyer went. He was Augie's friend. It turned out the judge says the will is. These guys, the lawyer from West Point, the work done, and the secretary signed the will. So I mean, what was she complaining about?
Yeah, it was already decided.
So it was the same thing. So I said to my kids, I don't want you to fight. I mean, that was such a terrible experience for me to see the two brothers not talking to each other because of some little incident that she made a remark. And now Pat's wife grew up in Saratoga. That's how he met her up there when they had the business, I guess. I don't know.
I'm going to pause it for a second so I can just start another video. And then what I want to ask you about is